on the African continent. We have a fantastic show this evening lined up for you, or this afternoon. I'm not used to doing streams this time of the day on a Saturday. We have a good friend of mine who has decided to come in, or agreed to come and chat with me. Someone who is more well known as the Deputy CEO of AfriForum, political provocateur, general triggerer of the EFF, and personal friend of Tucker Carlson, the most hated person on earth. But when he's not doing these fantastic things, he's also clearly very good at making babies. And that's what we are going to be talking about this afternoon. Welcome, Ernst.
Hi, Scott. Thank you for having me on, and thank you for that weird intro. I've never been introduced like that, but it's good to be on the show, and it's good to be talking about something that's quite out of the ordinary. I've never had a public discussion with someone about a topic like this, so I'm looking forward to it.
Brilliant. That's what we do on this show, Ernst. We break boundaries and lay new roads, you know. That's what this show is all about, you know. So, so anyway, I just want to give a little bit of a background story over here before we jump into some of the questions and stuff that I have for you. So myself and Ernst only sort of started talking probably about a couple of years back, maybe even less, maybe a year or so ago, and we've only met actually in person once, but we've bonded along the lines of the fact that we're both family men, and it's very, very important to us. And a lot of people that would chat with Ernst would be obsessed with chatting about how's things going with AfriForum, how's things going with your trip to the US and all that sort of stuff. But I'm really not interested in that. I'm interested in who Ernst Roets is as the man and the family man, because that's what's most important to me as a family man myself. And I think where we sort of bonded is that we never really, I mean, we'll talk about everything from Ernst's terrible dad jokes and and obviously sort of religion and that sort of thing, but very rarely about politics and all of that, which is, I think, a nice breath of fresh air for me as well as for Ernst, I'm sure. So jumping in, Ernst, to a couple of things. The first question talks to the title of our stream this evening, and it's an important question, and it's possibly a difficult question to answer. Sorry. Are big families happier families?
Well, that's in a way a loaded question. At least in my frame of reference, the answer is yes. But obviously, what we've seen in many places in South Africa and across the world is when you have a breakdown of community, a breakdown of culture and of values. And especially also when people live in poverty, they tend to have big families, and in many cases you see in families like that they would be broken families. Dad wouldn't be home, or mom wouldn't be home, or they wouldn't care about the kids, or the kids they would regard the kids as a burden and something like that. So in that sense, no, bigger families can be more problematic or even unhappier. But I think in a healthy society, a healthy community with healthy cultural values, to my mind, I would say that bigger families are happier families. Yes.
Yeah. So there's that title should come with a sort of a caveat as well. I guess it's like we need to clarify that happy families or bigger families are happier when the mother and the father are present, and big point, good point. I like that. Myself as well, Ernst. I mean, I grew up in a large family. My folks had 4 kids, like you, but you're far more based than my dad, because you have 4 boys, 4 kinglets. There were 3 boys, so it's myself and my 2 older brothers, and then my younger sister. But my parents also fostered my cousins, two of my cousins, and they basically, very much raised them. And our family was absolutely, there were 6 kids. I mean, it was absolute chaos. There was never a moment of silence. But it was beautiful. It was absolutely amazing. When we pulled into somewhere, like if we went away or something and we pulled into somewhere, it was just like kids piling out of the car, and I'm sure it's something that you can sort of relate to, the absolute chaos, but also beauty within that chaos.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. So I have, as you said, I have 4 boys, and 4 boys is, I think if you take a bigger historical perspective, 4 children isn't really that much, actually. It used to be pretty standard, or even a small amount of kids for a family to have. But in today's society, having 4 kids is in a way out of the ordinary. Although I'm glad to say that I actually know, me and my wife counted the other day, how many people do we know who are about our age who have 4 kids, and there's actually a long list. So I'm hoping that people, again, within that caveat that we mentioned at the beginning, I'm hoping that people are starting to have bigger families again. I think it's good for a healthy community. But yeah, we have that with 4 kids. We had to buy a bigger car. We have a Caravelle, a Volkswagen that we use when we go on holiday and so forth. And my wife drives the kids around. And showing up with 4 kids it's a lot of work. Also, it's a lot of fun. It takes effort to prepare the kids to go out and to prepare them for school and so forth. But it's more fun. The upside or the plus side is much bigger than the downside. And even worse, just to get to your example, is when our kids would have friends with them, and we would go on a family outing, and each of them would bring a friend along or something like this. You get just a swarm of kids. But I really love that. I can't think of anything in this world that gives me greater pleasure than just being around children and hanging out with kids and hanging out with my kids in particular, and having conversations with them and with their friends, asking them questions and talking about life. It's really great. It's one of the best things in life that you can experience.
Yeah, that was pretty much my upbringing as well. My dad always used to say this. So my dad, like the other day, I was chatting to him about it, and I was like, "How did you guys do this with all those kids and all that?" And he's like, "Well, it should have actually been 10. Like 4 is not a lot of kids." Like he says, having 4 kids is not an amazing thing. Like that's what he said. But in today's lens, like obviously, like you mentioned, in today's lens, it is viewed as and I'm going to get to how it's viewed again in today's things, but we'll hold off on that until for a later stage. But it's viewed, having 4 kids is something astronomical nowadays. But when my dad was having kids, he knew many people that had 5, 6, 7 kids, and it was quite normal. And especially when he was a young kid growing up as well. But my dad always used to say, he said, like, our house or our home had a massive open door policy. So it was like a bloody train station. There were oaks coming in and out, in and out, in and out. And then we'd have like massive cricket tournaments in the backyard. And it was just absolute chaos. But it was brilliant. It was the best life. I wouldn't change it for anything.
Yeah.
So, okay. I spoke with Dylan on Mr. Patriarch on his show a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about being a father in the ashes of civilization and all of that. It's quite dark and a heavy black pill and that sort of thing. So he asked me personally, what's the best part about being a dad? But I mean, I'm not going to ask you specifically what's the best part about being a dad, but I want to narrow in on what's the best part for you. I mean, you did kind of touch on it, but if you can just sort of expand on what's the best part of being a dad in a big family.
Well, I would have to think what the best part is, but I think one of the best parts about being a dad is just watching your children grow older, seeing them develop. And what I've noticed, what I really enjoy about my kids, and I'm sure it goes for every child is, especially when they start talking and they start interacting on a more intellectual level. You can really see that they are quite aware of the fact that they haven't been on this earth for very long, and I'm sort of new to this and I need to figure stuff out, and they would talk like that about, okay, well, I haven't had enough time to learn about this and things like that. So I really enjoy that. And what I really enjoy about big families, I can think of two things now on off the top of my head. I'll start with, well, the one is watching their relationships with each other. So in my case, I have 4 boys. So watching they each have completely distinct personalities. The way they talk to each other, the way they would spend free time, the way they would think about going to school and stuff like that, is every one of them is completely unique. And also with that in mind, they have a unique set of talents, they have a unique personality. With that in mind, how they interact with each other. And you can clearly see between the 4 boys how each one of them would have a special relationship with the other 3 in a very unique way. And then you can go to the second one and he would have a unique relationship with the other 3. So that to me is great. And the other thing, I would say the best thing about having a big family is family, not so much family outings, that too, but just family time at home. And when I met my wife, and that's also one of the reasons why I knew she was a keeper when she was still my girlfriend, we discovered that we are both into big families, and we both have this dream of, especially one day when we are older, with our kids, maybe, being adults already and starting to have children, the idea of having a family Christmas gathering, even, at our own house, and we have a big table and we have the whole family around the table, and you have to carry, the kids have to sleep on a Christmas bed. You put, mattresses in front of the TV or in front of the fireplace if it's cold. And that to me is, I can't think of anything that's better, a better experience in that. So I think the relationships is one, but the idea of a big family get together is to me the best thing about a big family.
Yeah, that's so true. Hey, I was exposed to this very much so. My wife, I don't know if you even know this, Ernst, but my wife is from Peru in South America, and she has a massive family. Hey, okay, so just to give you a context, my father-in-law comes from a family of 16 siblings. Okay, no word of a lie. Like two different mothers, though, same father, 2 different mothers, 16 siblings. And I remember going to my wife's grandmother's memorial service. They have these for every year for the 5 years after the someone has passed away. For every year for 5 years, they have a memorial service. And I remember when we went to one of the memorial services, and we went to the family home, and there were probably, I'm not exaggerating when I say there were probably about 300 direct families, cousins, aunties, uncles, about 300 of them. And it was quite an experience for me, and it was just absolute chaos. And I loved every moment of it. I remember standing there as this gringo, meeting the entire family, and they were they were all lining up to come and meet me, and I was shaking hands, just hello, hola, hola, ¿cómo estás? Hola, hola, for half an hour, just greeting people. It was quite something. But yes, that sort of family get together is so special in many different ways. And I think, and you mentioned this, or you touched on this as well briefly, is the idea of community. It's many people don't understand this, but a family on a micro level is essentially a small community. Everyone has different interests, everyone has different personalities, but you have to learn to sort of work together as a family. And that strong family unit in a large sense builds greater communities. which is what you kind of touched on as well. I mean, would you agree with that sort of statement?
Yeah, no, definitely. I would say the family or a family is the most natural community that you can get. And then if you talk about bigger, broader communities, cultural communities, and so forth, it's essentially a community of families, and it's built. The foundation thereof, or the building blocks, you could say, are families, and that's part of that's why if you have broken families, a community of broken families is a broken community. But maybe to add to this big family idea, one of the things I also really enjoy about a big family, again within a healthy family context, not that my family is perfect in every way. We're human beings. We're all sinners and all of that. But the sense, especially when you get older, the sense of solidarity between family members, and the idea that if someone messes with your brother, they're messing with you by implication, or if your cousin is sick or your uncle is sick, it affects you because it's someone who's close to you. And I actually thought about this, and I spoke with my wife about this just a few days ago. I have currently in my family, unfortunately, quite a few people who have COVID, who have tested positive for COVID, and one of them is very sick at the moment. I have an uncle who's currently on a ventilator in a hospital, and it really affected me and is affecting me in a sense that I'm quite emotional about that. And I said to my wife, it's strange that I haven't spoken with this particular uncle in I think more than a year. But there are people who live close to me, or colleagues who I work with, or people in my church, or whoever with whom I regularly interact. And why is it that I'm so affected by the fact that this person who's in my family is sick? And I think one of the reasons, there are many reasons, but one of the reasons, which is something I only thought about now, actually, this last week, is with family, you have, to a large extent, again, if it's a healthy family, an unconditional love and support. In the workplace, you should have a healthy relationship with your colleagues, but if you screw up in the workplace, you should get fired, and you probably won't speak to your colleagues again. If you screw up in the context of a healthy family, they will back you and they will support you, and they might be angry with you and you might have a big fight, but it's not as if you're never going to speak with them again. So I think there's a bond within a family context, much more within the smaller immediate family, and obviously it goes out. But there's a particular bond that should exist and does exist in healthy families. That is something a bond that doesn't exist in other contexts. You should have a bond with your family that's much stronger than the bond that you have with your friends or your colleagues and so forth. And that's healthy. That's how it's always been, and that's how it ought to be as well.
Blood is thicker than water, huh?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it.
That's exactly it. Yeah, I think that's vitally important. So why so many kids? Like why 4 kids? Like, I mean, many people will turn around to you, and I want to ask you what you'd say to them, but many people will turn around to me, and people have told me this as well. When I've told them, actually, I've told people, like I have a friend who has 4 kids, and I actually know someone else that has 8 kids. And when I tell them that, they freak out at me and say, "How irresponsible!"
Mm-hmm.
And like I just like veins start popping on my forehead, and I just get really inwardly angry, and I just I keep my cool and stuff. But what would you say to someone who said to you, having 4 kids is irresponsible?
Well, firstly, you spoke about people I actually know a family, or of a family who has 12 kids. in today's society, my wife's grandfather, I believe, comes from a family with 12 kids as well. So I think something that sort of upset me. I spoke with someone recently, actually with a child recently, and we were just having social banter, making jokes and so forth, and I asked this child if she has brothers or sisters, and she said no, she doesn't, that she doesn't want brothers or sisters. And I said to her, why not? She said, and then she said, because if she has brothers or sisters, her parents will spend less money on her when it's Christmas time. Yeah. So, and obviously it's not something, I mean, she was pretty small, so I don't think it's something that she made up. It's probably something that was said to her. And I know it's not that simple to just say to people, oh, you should have more kids, because every family is unique. And yes, obviously finances, your financial situation plays a big role. And it's, but I do think, and this is probably a controversial thing to say, but I think people tend to conclude too quickly that they cannot afford another child. We are used to so many luxuries that we don't really need. And we are in this consumerist, materialistic society where we sort of measure our quality of life by the amount of money that we spend on, going to the spa or buying expensive stuff and so forth. And in a way that's healthy, because it's an incentive, to grow the economy and to start a business and to employ people. But in a way, it's very unhealthy. And that's probably a bigger picture discussion to be had about the state of our society. But we live in a society in which it's incentivized not to have kids, or to have only one or two. And obviously, if people decide to have one child, it's their decision. And they might have very good reasons for deciding that. But this thing that it's irresponsible to have a big family, I can't understand it. I think it's very irresponsible to have a big family if it's a broken family. If you as a father, especially if it's not within the family context, if you as a father, if you're sleeping around and you have kids with different women and stuff like that, that's not what I'm talking about. But in my sense, it's you could flip the argument around and say it's irresponsible not to have children or to only have one, because I can see the dynamics in my family of how, for example, we have this rule in our family that you always have to stand up for your siblings. And it was very beautiful to me. My oldest, this was probably 3 years ago. I think he was around 6 years old. And we've spoken about this, that if someone comes around and bullies your brother, you have to stand up for your brother. And we were at this public event, or not event, this park, and the kids were playing. And his younger brother, my second boy or son, was playing on some, jungle gym or something. And they were older kids who were like probably 3 or 4 years older than my son. And they weren't really bullying him, but they were sort of, becoming a bit bullyish, and they were telling him to get off because they want to play there and they wanted to chase him away. And then I saw sort of from a distance my son running towards them and started basically scolding them, telling them, this is my brother, leave my brother alone. And I think that's a type of dynamics that you don't have in a family with one child. It's something that child misses out on. Sure, that child has to be very pessimistic or cynical about it. That child could have bigger Christmas presents and things like that. But there's something that's really beautiful in life about the interaction between siblings. And watching now, my youngest is a baby. He's 1 year old. But to see his brothers looking after him in the morning. This morning, for example, he was awake, still in his cot, and one of his brothers came into the room, and he immediately started smiling and laughing. And he's now at the age where he laughs when he sort of approves of something. And you could see the joy on his face when his brother came towards him to pick him out, just knowing, okay, now I'm going to go play with my brothers. It's something that you don't have in one child families, or obviously in families without children. But it is something that you see every day in the context of a big family, which is really beautiful. It's something, again, it's I can't think of something that gives me bigger joy than that.
Yeah, I think the idea or the story that you told about the child that said that she doesn't want a sibling or brother or sister or something because she's going to get less Christmas presents and stuff. I think that sort of, and this is very important, I think the child can't be blamed for that kind of thinking because that materialism has been passed on to the child by the parents, and it's, you know, I really honestly wouldn't be surprised if that child literally at some stage went to mommy and daddy and said, "Mommy and daddy, can I have a brother or sister?" And literally mommy and daddy turned around to him and said, "Do you want smaller Christmas presents?" You know, like, I mean, this is the type of adults that we have having children these days, you know. I remember reading an article about a survey in, I believe it was Italy or France or one of these places. I think it was Italy, and they did a survey across sort of adults between the ages of like 25 and 35 that were having kids. And basically the survey came down to, we're only having one child because we can't buy our two babies designer clothes, you know. So you know, that's the thing, you know. And I've obviously I'm obviously not done having babies, and wink wink nudge nudge, you know. And you know, but I'm really, friends of mine have told me, look, say goodbye to sending your child to private school and stuff. And I'm like, so, you know, we'll make a plan, you know. When I'll tell you what, Ernst, I grew up like literally sort of on a tightrope, balancing on the poverty scale, you know, like I was like, relative to most families nowadays, we grew up poor. And I think what that taught me is an understanding of money and an understanding of what's most important. You know, we didn't have much money, but yet still I sit here, I'm fine, you know, I'm doing perfectly fine. And I think that everyone says to me, they say to me, well, what happens if you guys are poor? And I'm like, I've been poor before, I can be poor again. But one thing that I will never do is I will never abandon my family. I will never abuse my wife. I will never abuse my children. I will never abandon them. And that for me is far more important than being wealthy and being able to send your children to private schools and stuff. And I think that people have totally lost the plot on that sort of thing, you know. Beth over here. Hi, Beth. Good to have you here. This is the advice for parents. Pep & Ackermans is perfect. Pick and Pay clothing when you're feeling flush. Yeah, absolutely. I was looking for gumboots for my daughter, and I went all over. Couldn't find gumboots, and went into Pep and saw these pink glittery gumboots, and she loves them. She thinks they're the greatest thing ever. And this is the thing, you know, why I'm going to pay 69 Rand for them. I went and looked online at what's this baby shop? Anyway, one of these like fancy baby shops, and the same boots were, you know, $300. You know, why am I going to do that? Why am I going to waste money? It just makes no sense. But I think that I think you touched on a prime point over there, is the fact that parents and adults are just so incredibly materialistic. Why do you think? What would separate someone from being an obsessive materialist, and why are people like that? I mean, I know it's a bit of a difficult question, but
well, I think firstly, there's nothing wrong with being poor. I think that's an important point to start with, and but there's also nothing wrong with wanting money, and it's a good incentive. Especially if you are a father, and you have a family, you can't just sit around with your family all day and not actually care for them. That's not why we were created in the first place. So you have to go out and do some work and earn money to be able to afford stuff for them. My children are not in a private school. I would have liked to put them in a private school. Probably if I had one or two children, they probably would have gone to a private school. if I, but I think someone, just to go about the schooling topic, I have some serious concerns about government schools or schools that are owned by the government. But there's a big debate about private schools versus government schools, and it's an important debate. And I'm very much for private schools. But there's something that's much more important than the question of whether you're sending your kids to a private school or not. And that's, how are you actually raising your kids? And are you involved with the school? My children are as I said, they're in a school where one day I actually took a video. It was like 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock at night, and they were doing some sport. And I just turned around and I took a video just to see seeing all the parents on the rugby field with their kids involved in some way. It's really beautiful in a way. And yes, children are being taught stuff in schools that are very alarming. And my approach and my wife's approach is if our kids get taught something that we're upset about or we disagree with, we take it up with the school. And we're not nagging. The point is not to nag the school all the time. The point is to be involved much more in a positive way. So we contribute as far as we can with the school being involved with projects and fundraisers. And when there's a fundraiser where the kids are involved, we're actively involved and all of that. But sometimes when something comes up that makes you uncomfortable, you call the teacher and you say, well, I don't appreciate, I don't approve of this and whatever. So yeah, I think that, and I think on the clothing thing as well, I don't think there's anything wrong with buying designer clothes for your kids. There could be, depends probably on the context. My children wear Ackermans and Pep clothing, and sometimes we go to Pick and Pay clothing as well. And my kids they also have gumboots, and we bought them the cheap ones. I think it was also the Pep store's gumboots, and they love them. I think one of mine is wearing his gumboots at the moment. But also with kids, they don't recognize if you've spent a lot of money on something or not. So you can buy them expensive stuff and you can buy them really cheap stuff, and they would oftentimes enjoy the cheap stuff much more. Just looking at the toys my kids play with, they don't by any dimension use the amount of money you spent on a toy as a measure of whether it's a good toy or not. And with boys, one of my kids, I caught my second oldest. He's how old is he now? He's 7. He's 7. I caught him earlier today. He was playing with sticks. He plays with sticks and stones all the time, and we have a tin of glue, wood glue that you use to glue wood. And I caught him gluing the stick to the house. So he was outside with a stick, putting glue on and trying to glue it to the house. And I mean, I said to him, you shouldn't do that. But to me, it was a much more beautiful thing to see than something that I was angry about. But, the amount of time that he has spent playing with sticks and stones and, playing in the dirt and climbing trees is much more. And it's something that's free. So yeah, I think we as a broader society, just to answer your question, we as a broader society, we've become very materialistic and consumerist, and there's a lot of answers a lot of things to which there are answers or solutions that have nothing to do with money.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. I was chatting to a good friend of my wife, and my wife was chatting to her and this morning, and because she's coming to visit us in next month. She's from Durban, and she wanted to buy my daughter a gift. So she asked, how old is my daughter? So I said she's 18 months old. And then she asked my wife, she's like, well, what does Isabella like to play with? And my wife answered her, stones.
Yeah, exactly.
Her favorite game is like on the one side of the house we have like a section where it's like a gravel stones kind of things. And her favorite game is to take the stones from that side and walk to a drain on the other side of the house and go and hoy the stones in the drain, And that's like far better than any toy. She plays for more doing that than with any other toy that we have. And that's, I don't get the idea that children need to, play with amazing things over here. Russell McLaren says over here, Ernst raising good Boersians. Yes. I just want to jump in the comments here quickly. There's my dad. There's the legend himself with his Rhodesian flag over there. And then Dagbreker, a bit late, but welcome. What does Beth say over here? I can't tell you how many stones I find in my washing machine that fall out of my boys' pockets. Yeah, that's it. Stones everywhere. There was something that you touched on when you were talking about this now. Oh, yes. The whole private school versus government school, and you know, where you need to ask yourself, how are you raising these kids? You know, there's this obsessive thing. I don't know if it's distinctly a South African thing or if it's international or whatever it is, but there's this common trend that parents want to almost sort of pass their responsibility onto some sort of other institution, like onto a private school or something. Like, you know, I mean, this is the point, okay? And I've said this to friends of mine, and their eyes like explode out of their heads when I say this. They say, "Well, what are you going to do about your child learning about, you know, I don't know, masturbation at age 4 or 6 or whatever it is?" And I said, okay, well, I'll just re-educate them, you know, like, do you think that I, as their father, have less of an influence on their lives than a school? You know what I mean? And a teacher? No, they're going to listen to me more than what they're going to listen to their teacher, because I'm going to raise them to understand that I'm their father and they listen to me, you know. And I think that too many parents have tried to sort of push their responsibility as parents onto schools and other institutions, and it's quite bizarre.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the case. And so there's this, I mean, me and my wife have spoken about this thing about kids, you know, this sentiment that kids think their teachers are smarter than their parents, and oftentimes they do think that. And my kids have always, we were very privileged in that sense. They've always loved their teachers, and they love the teachers they have at the moment as well. And they would oftentimes argue with us, oh no, well, teacher said this and so forth. But that doesn't mean that they have a stronger bond with their teacher than they have with their parents. And sometimes they might be angry with their parents, and they would sort of choose something their teacher said, but that doesn't last that long. If you're an involved parent, if your child knows that you love him or her and you are involved with their life, and you're always there to back them up and help them out, they would listen to you. And I think, again, it goes down to having a healthy family structure, and to be involved, and to be involved with your child's teacher as well, not in the sense that you should, you know, prescribe to your teacher how he or she should be a teacher, but to ask them, how can I help my child? What is he struggling with at school? Is there something we can do at home? You know, in that sense, to support the teacher to be a good teacher. And if your children are in a school with bad teachers, then that's something else. But the point is that a parent should be involved within a particular context or frame of reference. Again, as I said earlier, it can be unhealthy. It's not healthy for a father, for example, to be so involved with his child's life that he doesn't go to work, he doesn't have a work, he doesn't want to go to work, he just sits at home, and he doesn't give the child freedom to learn to discover things for himself. But that's an extreme side of the spectrum that we almost never see in our society today. The other extreme side is something that we do see, and that is parents who are uninvolved because they're just too preoccupied with their professions or their careers and stuff like that. That's the extreme that we do see. And then oftentimes they would turn around and say, well, why don't I have this bond with my child? And if you're an absent parent, you will not have a particular bond with your child, or the bond would not be the way it ought to be. But if you have a healthy bond with your child, and again, having a healthy bond with your child also means that sometimes you're going to be angry with each other. Sometimes you're going to have to discipline your child, and when the child gets older, my kids aren't teenagers yet. I remember me as a teenager, I had me and my mom especially, we were fighting every day. We had a very bad relationship with me in high school. But now I have a very strong relationship. Well, actually, I've always had a very strong relationship with my mom. I think kids, just as they grow up, they go through different phases and all of that. And I think there might have been a time when my mom could have thought that, well, we have some form of a broken relationship because I'm always arguing with her with everything she did and questioning everything. But it was a phase that I went through as a teenager, and now I have a very good relationship with her. So yes, I think it's important for parents to be involved, and being involved sometimes just means disciplining your child or telling them when something is wrong. Or so being involved doesn't only mean having a good time and buying them sweets and toys and playing with them. There are other ways in which you should be involved as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's also, it's very common for young male teenagers to have an issue with their mothers and stuff. But like, I promise you, like my dad's on here, he'll tell you, I speak to my mother every single day. I phone her every single day. And I'm not ashamed to admit that at this point in time, I am an absolute mommy's boy. I love my mother very much. But when I was a teenager, there were many moments when I told her I hated her, and of course my dad immediately clapped me reg, and and then I snapped out of it. But yeah, I think what's important, and this is the thing, is there's all these horrible things out there. The world is a nasty, ugly, depraved, horrible place. No amount of sheltering your child from this stuff is going to protect them from it. They are going to come into contact. This morning, it was quite something. I was sitting and I was watching with my daughter while my wife caught up on a bit of sleep because she had a bit of a rough night last night. I was sitting with my daughter and we were watching little clips from Lord of the Rings, and people told me, they're like, oh, you really shouldn't be showing your daughter this, and it's a little bit too like adult and stuff. And I'm like, what? Take that back. This is like the greatest Christian fiction literature ever written. You know what I mean? But it the point is and I also like because you and me have a mutual enjoyment of good metal music and stuff. And my daughter listens to metal, and well, I don't know if she listens to it, but I play metal music around her and stuff. Yeah. And the point is some people will maybe sort of criticize me about that, but my point is that I'm rather going to train my daughter in these things, harden her up to the world, so that when eventually when it comes the time for her to face the world on her own, she can do it. The world doesn't hit her too hard. And lots of parents think that some sort of miraculous sheltering your child is just going to, obviously you shouldn't be showing your child porn and all kinds of like ridiculous stuff, obviously, but strengthen them to the world and stuff, and train them against the world.
Yeah, I know. I obviously agree with that. And there are some things, horrible things has happened to children many times in the past and will still happen. And there are some things, there's always a risk. When one day I got home, as I said, my second oldest boy is very adventurous. He's quite introverted. He was the guy who was gluing the stick to the house this morning. But he's very adventurous. He always collects stones and sticks, and he climbs on stuff, and he's always somewhere else, and he likes to go out alone into the bushes or something. So one day when I got home after work, I found him. As I drove into the driveway, I saw him sitting on the roof of the house, and I had to figure out how did he get there, and he was like 5 years old. So it turns out the way he got there was there's a wall around the house, and he, on the one side of the yard, the other side of where the roof is, he used a chair or something to get onto the wall, and he walked around the wall up onto the other side. So the wall sort of gets a bit higher, and from there, I think he used something else and eventually got onto the roof. And in a way, I stopped and I took a picture, and I found it funny, and I told him to get off, and I told him that it's dangerous, but it might happen again and he might fall off. and he might get hurt. So that type of thing can happen, and you should try to shelter your kids from that. But there's only a certain extent to which you can, or I would even say should, shelter your kids, because especially with boys, I don't know. I don't have any experience with girls. I don't have a daughter. We have very few daughters in my family. In my immediate family, I don't have a sister. So I don't know about girls.
His family will live on for generations.
Yeah, I know. We have. My parents have we are we now? I think 11 grandchildren who are boys. So we're pretty sorted. So the root surname will survive. But no, I think there's a certain level of exposure that children should have to grow up healthy, and they should be exposed to a certain, you could even say, a certain extent of danger. I mean, I know of a family who's lost a child who fell out of a tree. He was climbing a tree, he fell out, and he passed away as a result of that. And there are other horrible stories as well that we can talk about. But you can't tell, if you have boys, you can't tell them they're not allowed to climb in trees. And if you do that, it's probably, I would say, it's bad parenting. If you tell your child he's not allowed to climb in a tree. Yes, some trees are more dangerous than others, and sometimes they could climb up very high, and you have to tell them they can't go that high. So you have to look after them, but we can't control everything. We can't control the elements, and I think especially for boys, for them to become strong and healthy men and responsible men, they need to have been exposed to danger as well, and to the elements, and to risks. And it's tricky, and it's sometimes it's scary, but I don't know of any other way to approach this.
Yeah, it's the same way as, how you train your muscles. You have to come across tension. It's not, life's not going to be easy outside. You know what I mean? So you're going to have to climb a couple of trees and fall out of them. The harsh reality, and I know it's easy for me to say this. I'll be absolutely shattered if I had to lose a child to an accident or something. But the reality is we have to find comfort in knowing and understanding that if and when that sort of thing happens, that, sounds harsh. A lot of people have a hard time with this, but that it is God's will, and we need to somehow find comfort in that. So don't shelter your children. Let them know, or know that they are in God's hands, and there is only God will decide, and this is the reality. So I just want to jump into the comments here quickly, Ernst. Dagbreker says, I agree with Scott. I make a point of it to be involved with my kids' schoolwork, realizing that they will probably become exposed to certain topics. At least they can talk to me about it. Absolutely. There we go. Moss, Dagbreker. Russell says parents must be involved in kids and need to be trained up by the parents for the big wide world out there. Beth says she has a teenage daughter. It's rough. All right, Beth, I'll send you a sympathy card, and then you can send me a sympathy card when my daughter's a teenager as well. Okay.
Yeah, I'll tell you maybe one of the on the issue of climbing trees. So my son, again, this very adventurous one, fell out of a tree this weekend. But one of the funny things, you asked me about what are the great things about having a big family, and one of it is children. There was that show, Kids Say the Darnest Things, and people said to me, actually, when my oldest son was born, that they say the funniest things and you need to write them down. So I try to post a lot of it on Facebook. That's sort of my journal in a way when it comes to these things, and then Mark Zuckerberg can enjoy it as well. But so with and also one of the funny things is when they switch around, when they use the wrong words. Now with my kids, they talk some English, or they understand English, and so my third son, he thinks the words freaky is the same as scary. And they mix their language, which I don't approve of, and I keep telling them they mustn't mix their language. But when he's scared of something, he would say it's freaky.
As julle kinders heeltemal tweetalig, Ernst?
Ja, hulle is redelik, ja. And they know a bit of German as well. I have this strange thing where when I get angry, like in a slightly more humorous way, not like actually really upset, I start, and I don't even recognize I do this, but I start talking to them in German. And people often laugh when I would say whatever, nicht so machen or nicht schreien or something. I would scream at them when they're screaming at each other.
Don't shout. Don't scream.
Yeah, nicht schreien is don't shout. Yes. And so and they understand it. I recognize it when I say to them nicht schreien, they know that means they must stop screaming. But so what happened this weekend is my son came to me, he was crying, and I could see he wasn't too much hurt. I think it was more of a fright. And I asked him what's wrong, and he was sort of crying. He couldn't really say. And then his younger brother said, no, he fell out of a tree. And I'm like, oh, what happened? And he said, no, he got into the tree. He was climbing that tree, and then the tree got freaky, and then he fell out. So stuff like that. It's just these little things that kids say that's just it really adds to family life, and why it's so important to have a healthy family structure and to spend time with your family and to appreciate it, to appreciate the time that you do have with your family.
Absolutely. I want to just jump here. Dagbreker, this is such a good quote by CJ Langenwerfen. It says, your child will still leave his education at school. His upbringing will accompany him to the grave. Absolutely. I mean, what a brilliant quote.
Can I just add something to that about upbringing? And this is something that a friend of mine said a few years ago, and I've quoted her a few times, and I've said to her that I've quoted her a few times, is she was, she's comes from a very conservative religious family, and much like myself and my wife. And it's actually a mutual friend of me and my wife who we've had growing up. And she introduced us to each other. And she said to me that sort of being exposed to the real world, one thing that sort of bothered her about a lot of people she met and a lot of families is they don't spend time talking about ideas. And to her, growing up, that was sort of natural, and that was natural to me as well. Obviously, we talk about other stuff as well, but I remember growing up, sitting at the dining room table with my parents, or there was a time when we lived on the farm with my grandfather. And I remember there's one word that sort of sums up my grandfather, who passed away in 2006. But it's a very conservative thing to say, but he would explain to us. I remember sitting around the dining room table, and he would explain to us the word rentmeester, which is probably, I think, to be a trustee is probably the right English word. And he would say, he explained to us that we need to remember that we are rentmeesters. And then he explained it to us that we do have a lot of stuff that we value. And he wasn't only talking about materialistic stuff. He was talking about stuff broader than just physical things that we own, culture and religion and values and tradition and things like that. And these are things that it's in our possession, but it's not ours. It was passed down to us. And it's something that we should value, and it's something that we should preserve, so that we can hand over that baton to our next generation as well. And I think it's important I very much firmly believe that it's important for families to sit around the dining room table or in the living room or while driving in the car, and just sometimes spend some time talking about the bigger, more important things in life, talking about ideas, so to speak, rather than just, what's a good place to go and have a holiday, and have you done your maths homework? And those things are important as well. But just talking about ideas and exchanging ideas and having a sense or a culture or a climate in which you can disagree also and say, well, maybe not, I don't know if I agree with this, or I don't understand this. It gives a child such an advantage in life, if to have grown up in a family where you would discuss ideas other than just materialistic things, which is a very, very bad element of the society in which we live currently.
Yeah, I think the word rentmeester, I think the word that you're looking for there is maybe steward. Like
I think that's the right word. Yeah.
So you're a steward to culture and your family
Yeah.
and all the things that your family holds dear. And families have family traditions. You know what I mean? And those, your grandfather would have been a steward or a great keeper of those family traditions that would live on long after he's gone. And I think that is incredibly important. The idea of stewardship.
Can I tell you about two traditions in our family that comes from my mother's side of the family? The one is pretty odd, and I remember as a son, I always enjoyed it. But I never really understood it, and I thought it was silly. And now that I'm older, it's something that I feel very strongly about, especially now that my grandparents have passed away, and it's a way to sort of honor them. We have this weird thing that my great-grandfather started, and I'm trying to find out the history. I don't know if other people do it. It's very specific. So on the 6th of January, what we would do is we would take a tin bowl or plate, and we would put some raisins in it, sort of fill it up with raisins, and then also add brandy to the plate. We would put it on a table, sort of a smallish table, switch off the lights, and light the brandy so that you set it on fire. And then what we have to do is we walk a circle around the plate, and you grab the raisins out of the plate and you eat it. And
while it's still on fire.
Yeah, while it's still on fire, yeah. So you have to shove your hand into the fire and grab the raisins. And sometimes when you take too much of a grab, there's some brandy in it, sort of the fire is in your hand, and you sort of have to shake it or blow it out. And it's a weird thing, but I mean, it's something that we do every year on the 6th of January because it's a family tradition. But there's another family tradition that we have that also sort of started with my great-grandfather, for which I'm very, very grateful. And it's a tradition of when you're old enough, when you retire, you write your memoirs, you write your life story, like an autobiography. And even if it's only for your kids to read, it's something that, like, I knew my grandfather, and I have his autobiography on my shelf behind me. And to read that, to understand his way of thinking, and in a way, that's going to be what my kids have of my grandfather. He died before they were born, and their children are going to have that as well. The same way I have an autobiography of my great grandfather. So it's really, and that's something that's really valuable. And I would really encourage that. I'm calling it a family tradition. It sort of started with my great grandfather, but I think it's very important for people, especially when they get older. Even if they weren't famous or something like that, to just sit down and write their life story, even if it's only for their kids to read and their grandkids to read, and write down your ideas and what do you think were important, what were your struggles, and I think it's very important because it gives you a sense of that stewardship. It gives you much more appreciation of that. If something was important to your great grandfather, there was probably a reason for it to have been important, and it's something that maybe it should be important to you too. And that's why I think writing your life story to me is something that I think is very important.
Yeah, I like that idea. I think what it would also do is it would almost sort of reinforce a respect for your grandparents or your grandfather. When they write their memoirs and you hear about their struggles and the things that they sort of pushed through as men and all of that. You know, a prime example of this is my father. You know, my father is 76 now. It was his birthday the other day, and he was born in South Africa but grew up in Zambia, or Northern Rhodesia as it was called then. And he obviously he did his military service and stuff, and then when he was 30 odd, when Russell was young, probably about a year or so, he got drafted and went off to the war and all of these sort of things. So, you know, as a South African, as growing up as a South African, you know, all of my friends' fathers, you know, spent time on the border. But a lot of them, when they went to the border, it was just like, you know, a lot of them just filled sandbags at barracks and swept, you know, camps out and that sort of thing. You know, very few of my friends' fathers actually saw like real action. So I assumed my dad just packed or put sand in sandbags, in his when he got drafted. And I was having a chat with him a while ago. Still made a video about it, but I was having a chat with him about it, and I asked him. He had never really spoken to me about his time in the war and all of that. And I asked him. I said, because something I had to know. I said, did you ever kill someone in the war? And he told me, yes, of course I did. It was war, and I was involved in action and blah blah blah. And through him telling me that, and all of the things, all of the mistakes that I was so judgmental of my dad for, growing up as a teenager and a young adult and stuff, all of the things that I was incredibly judgmental about my dad completely fell away when he told me that, because I kind of understood. I understood the troubles that he had to go through with dealing with that psychologically and all of that, and that he still pushed through and raised a good family and all of that. And I think that, like, if you are reading your father's memoirs and stuff, or your grandfather's memoirs, and you hear these struggles and you hear these things that these people went through, or these men went through to raise your family and to put you in the position that you are today, it adds, or it reinforces a very, very deep respect for your for what people have done before you. And I think that's very, very important.
Yes, and I think maybe to bring it slightly back to our context today, I had an interview a few weeks ago with Nicholas Bauer on 702, and he asked me a question, and I actually haven't. It's something that people should think about, but I can't remember me actually thinking about that before. He asked me, okay, well, he asked me who are my heroes, but he was talking like in a bigger political context. Who do I admire, especially from a historical perspective? Which people in history do I admire? Do I want to be like? And
yeah, he was probably trying to pin down your political ideology.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think he was doing. I think he was expecting me to mention some apartheid prime minister.
Yeah, he was probably expecting you to mention Dr. Verwoerd or something.
Verwoerd or something, yeah. But in all honesty, I couldn't think of someone. There are people like historical figures who I think, oh, well, if this would have been someone I would have liked to meet, or this is someone I have respect for, or this person was very good at this particular thing. But if you ask me who are my heroes, who do I look up to, who would I like to be like, I can't think of a single historical person. But what I can think about people in my family. I can say with great confidence, I want to be like my dad, or I want to be like my two grandfathers, or I want to be like my uncle or like my cousin. And there are certain traits in them. To me, it's a much bigger compliment if someone said to me, oh, well, you're just like your uncle, or you're just like your father or your grandfather or your brother, than if someone said to me, oh, well, you remind me of this person in history who said this thing, or this person who had this great achievement. It's good to hear something like that, but to be likened to someone in your family for whom you have respect, to me, is a much bigger compliment. And I think my family is not perfect. We're all sinners, and we've done some horrible things, and we've been angry with each other and so forth. But at least I think there's a healthy respect and a healthy love, and that's something. And it comes to the issue of big families again. I struggle to really see that in a family or a bigger family structure, where if you're talking about a family like a few children and they each just have one child, and their cousins, all of them just have one child, to me it's more difficult to really grasp that or imagine that happening. But it's something that you see within the context of a big family playing out, when going out to some family event, and you mentioned that all the cousins are there and they play with each other and the dynamics. Okay, these two are fighting, so now this one's playing with that one, and that one's playing with that one, and that's something that in a big family context, it just naturally happens. And it's and there's this thing. I have a cousin on my father's side who recently went through a hard time, and I haven't spoken with him in years, but just hearing about that, it upset me. I was sad about that. And it's something, again, it's like the example I mentioned of my uncle being in the hospital. It's even my cousin, a cousin with whom I haven't spoken in years, can go through a hard time, and it should upset you because it's family, and there's a bond within a family context that I think in today's society is underestimated. It's regarded, especially on the left, I don't want to go too political, but people regard families and family values as something that should be destroyed or as a bad thing, when that's probably the most natural things, or one of the most natural things in society. It's you won't be able to destroy it. You're going to have to try really hard to destroy family life and family love and family structure. But there's something about a big family and the big family context where you can really see that blossom in a way.
That's also an absolute white pill, that, the idea that no matter how hard they come against us, they'll never be able to destroy us. This is the point, I have some friends who are like extremely, we use the term black pilled, do you know the white pill and a black pill?
Yeah.
So they're extremely sort of black pilled about life, and they're like, well, this is the end, guys. Let's just all give up and sit and cry and blah, blah, blah. But for me, I have faith in the human spirit. I have faith in the way that God made us. And I have faith that, no matter how dark situations are, in the end, we win. Like, this is the thing. Like, no matter how hard they come against us. And this is supposed to be the Christian ethos, but for many Christians, they've lost this idea that even if we are outnumbered 1,000 to 1, 100,000 to 1, we still carry on. Like, this is the thing, we push on. And something that's vitally important for me, and it's something that concerns me, and it's slightly easier for Afrikaans guys and stuff, but for an English South African, the only thing that I want for my family and my children and my grandchildren and stuff is not wealth and money and stuff. What I want for them more than anything is I want them to have a place under the sun. And I want them to have a place where they belong, and somewhere where they feel like they belong. And that for me is the most important part of the most important thing that I can leave my children. And I'll build it for them. I will build it for them if it's the last thing that I do. If I'm outnumbered 1,000,000 to 1, I don't care. They can come at me.
Yeah.
And this is how the Christian ethos is supposed to be. But I just want to we've been going over an hour now. I don't know how much. Are you pressed for time, Ernst? Do you have another sort of 15, 20 minutes?
Yeah, let's push until 1:30.
Lekker.
I'll have to run.
So I just wanted to find out now, obviously a big important part is, you touched on it as well, a big important part of being a father and a family man is finding the right woman and knowing how to find the right woman. And, I've never met your wife. She's befriended me on Facebook, and she's funny, and she's, happy, and she loves her job as a mother, and she's a proud mother and stuff. And that's very important. But, and this goes to, I don't know, I don't read, I think that's Russian, whatever your name is, right over here. Advice to young religious Afrikaner men who are trying to navigate the current post-sexual revolution dating world in the pursuit of finding a good partner and starting a family. See, that's actually a very, very, very good point. A lot of the black pill guys out there, they're also like, oh, all the women nowadays are horrible. Like, all the women are rubbish. But how would you advise an Afrikaans man, religious man, to go out there and find a wife?
Well, I've never been asked this question, so I'll think out loud answering that. I think, which is probably a good thing, because then it's a very honest answer, and I'll have to figure it out as I speak. But I think one of the things, the first thing I would say is have a very good understanding of who you are and what your principles are and your values are, and where you come from. And find someone who shares that with you. I can't imagine a sustaining relationship, or marriage or family life if there's just too much of a difference between the mom and dad. And I don't mean personality difference. I mean, so I for example can't imagine being in a marriage where the husband and the wife don't have the same religion, just, to start with. Or the one is religious and the other one thinks religion is silly, as an example.
I would hate it, Ernst, to be honest with you. I would hate it if my wife loved politics. Like,
and maybe to add to that is to mention what you're saying, as I think there should be differences between people. You should like things that your wife doesn't like, and the other way around. And the other thing that I've been thinking about is, or not been thinking about, that in retrospect, when you think back, everyone, or almost everyone, growing up, has some form of a what do you call it? Disappointment. You get, you have a girlfriend that leaves you or something like that. And that's what life is like. But I think we should not be, people, especially men, should not be too hasty and think, oh, the first person you meet in high school is the person you're going to be with for the rest of your life. And sometimes it works out like that for some people. And so, but that's not.
Sometimes it works out for some people like that, eh?
No, well, I've known my wife. I've met my wife in, I think, my second year at university.
Okay.
And as I said, we've had a mutual friend who sort of introduced us to each other. But I think it's important to take time. And when I'm saying this, I'm actually thinking about a friend of mine growing up who got married quite late. And people were sort of, I don't want to say making fun of him, but sort of joking around and saying, oh, well, you don't have a wife yet. And, oh, are you ever going to find someone? And he's very happily married now. He has 4 children. It's a great family. And obviously in families and in marriages, there are difficult times. And sometimes you have to work things out, and there are disagreements. And there should be. I think I have friends who've said to me, oh, well, me and my wife, we don't really have arguments. You don't really fight. And then I look at my wife and it's like, oh, well. So yeah, exactly. So
that monkey meme.
Yeah, exactly. That meme, I actually thought about that meme. Yeah. So, I mean, I think you should have disagreements, and you should you should sort things out, and you should be committed. But the underlying important thing for me is find someone who shares your values, who shares your philosophy on life. Find someone who doesn't have the same personality as you do, and there's nothing wrong with waiting. There's nothing wrong with taking time looking for someone. Oftentimes, that's what you ought to be doing. So yeah, I think that would be my quick answer. If you ask me this question and you ask me to answer by tomorrow, I'll give you a different answer, probably a more thought through answer. But these are, I think, I would say, the important things.
Yeah, I think I agree with you 100%. Like when myself and my wife were, it's interesting. A lot of the views that I hold now, I didn't hold when I met my wife. When we met each other, I mean, myself and my wife have known each other for probably 12 years now. But we went through a whole bunch of nonsense. Like we were, and this is why I'm so critical of this type of person, because I was this type of person. We were the sort of travel the world, enjoy our lives, blah blah blah. We've got plenty of time, blah blah blah. And so we've only been married for about 5 years. We were living in sin for many years. But one thing that I kind of made clear was that first and foremost, I wanted children, and secondly, that our family will be raised strictly and staunchly Christian. Take that away, and I think it would have been a recipe for disaster, because myself and my wife are in a lot of cases polar opposites. A lot of the stuff that she likes, I don't like. My wife despises politics, and I love it. Well, I don't love politics, but
you're interested in it, yeah.
Yeah, I'm interested in it and stuff, but she absolutely despises it, and that's great for me. I don't want to sit at home and talk to my wife about the ANC and the EFF. I mean, I wouldn't like to talk to my wife about those things. I have a lot of other things to talk about. But talking to that now, I know why this person mentioned the current post-sexual revolution. And I've spoken to other younger guys about this. I'm involved in my church youth group and stuff, and a lot of the youngsters that are in our core team are sort of 19 to 25, kind of looking for a wife sort of thing. And they'll talk to me about these things, and they'll say, well, it's difficult to find a woman that's not sort of hyper promiscuous and not religious and all of that. And that is an issue nowadays. I won't deny it. It's a massive issue when choosing and finding a woman and stuff. But the point is with men, and men need to take the stand over here. We can't expect women to fix our problems, and gosh, I'm gonna the ladies that might be watching might have a bit of a fit about this, but men need to take charge, and it's up to the man to I don't want to say this, but it's up to the man to kind of direct the woman in better places. I'm not saying that you need to go and marry some woman that's extremely promiscuous and stuff. Don't do that. That's not what I'm saying. But a lot of men will basically, yes, there we go. Beth
Don't
put
be a
it in
simp.
like one. There we go. You got it, Beth. Don't be a simp. Yeah. Don't be a simp. Don't simp out there for women. Men need to take charge of this. Don't sit and cry and say, oh, but there's no good woman out there, blah, blah. Go and find a good woman. There are plenty of good women out there. I know people that have recently married, virgins, and all of that. Like, go out there. There are plenty of really nice women out there. Stop crying, man.
And personality wise, it's more difficult for some people than for others. And I really feel sorry for I'm actually, me and my wife, we spoke about it yesterday. People tend to think that I'm very extroverted because I do interviews all the time, and I don't. To me, it's very easy to go onto a stage and to speak, to pick up a microphone and speak with people. It in a way, it comes naturally to me, just from a personality perspective. But I'm actually very introverted, and I don't usually speak to people who I don't know. I'm just not like that. So I remember in high school, I would have friends who, every boy in high school wants a girlfriend, and I would have friends who they would have like 10 girlfriends, and I'm too shy to speak to the girl in which I'm interested. And so yes, some people have it easier than others. I still had it easier than many of my other friends who were even more shy or more afraid of girls than I was. But what I've heard many times, not that I'm at all an expert on what women want, not at all, but I've heard many times women say that to them, men are much more interested in physical appearance than women. And I've heard many women say that the thing that is most attractive in a man is his personality, but not particularly personality. It's more his confidence. And I think that's, in a sense, speaks to what you're saying about men needing to take charge. Is men need to be confident. And you don't need to be confident about everything. There are a lot of things in which I'm not confident. I can see, again, going back to the big family, I can see with my 4 boys, even including the one who's turning 2 in a month, who's almost 2 years old, the youngest one, that even with him, you can see his personality already. I can see with him that there are things in which each one of them is confident in some things in which the others aren't, or the other way around. They have a lack of confidence to do certain things. One of them would be more confident to speak in front of people. The other one would be more confident to jump over a big, hole in the ground and stuff like that. Or the other one would be more confident to play sports or something. So I think, and we're all born, and I think this is a biblical message as well, or at least my understanding of the Bible is, we're all born, we're all unique in the sense that we have a unique set of talents, and it's one of our duties on earth, or responsibilities, is to discover those talents and to really develop them. And you can be confident, you can have a lack of confidence in a lot of things, and I think we should have a lack of confidence in a lot of things, because there are only a small amount of things in which we can be really good. But you need to discover your talents and build your talents and be confident in that. So that would be that's advice that I have given my children, and I will certainly continue to give them, is figure out what is it that you are really good in, figure out what is it that you really like, and develop that talent, and be confident in doing that. And I think that goes a bit to the point about, I'm only talking about, talents and stuff like that, but it goes a bit to the confidence thing. But I think there are certain things that, and this is politically very incorrect, but I think it's a biblical message. There are certain, in a traditional family, the husband or the man or the father has a particular role to play, and the wife or the woman or the mother has a particular role to play, and it's not the same thing. This thing that we have today about, men and women are basically the same. We're not. There are things that my wife can do much better than I can do that. And I think, for example, if we're talking about religion and making sure that the kids are brought up in the correct way, I regard that as part of a father's duty, to make sure that he takes his family to church and things like that. And so I absolutely agree with your comment that men should stand up and take charge and be men, and not be afraid of that. In today's society, it's regarded as wrong to be a man, but men should be men, and they should take responsibility for that.
Absolutely. So I just want to read Dagbreker's comment over here, dropping some serious truths over here. He says, my grandmother always said, stop looking for the best woman, focus on the best man. It's about standards. Build it and they will come. This is the thing, and I found this, and you'd probably agree with me, Ernst, on this, is that certain things that I want to happen, or that I imagine happening in my family, and that I hold dear to me, morally and that sort of thing, I will stick to it. Like, I won't budge. Like, some things, like, I mean, small things possibly, I will stick to them and won't budge. And eventually my wife will eventually start doing those things without me, even trying to push it or anything. It's fascinating how a woman kind of just sort of, I don't know, she just does these things when you just hold her, you stick to your guns, and she eventually just sort of follows suit. I'm talking about my wife like I'm training a dog, but
but it's the other way around as well. I can see with my wife, she has certain things that she regards as very important, being a woman, and she sticks to that, and she sticks to her guns, and I have to follow suit.
Absolutely, it goes both ways. Absolutely,
yeah. A man has to play that role, and a woman has to play that role. So that's absolutely the case, and you shape each other. And the great thing about a healthy marriage, again, not that my marriage is perfect. I really love my wife, and she's said to me that she loves me. But one thing that I really, really appreciate about my wife, one of the many things, is how honest she can be, brutally honest, and she knows me better than anyone else. She knows me better than my parents know me, than my brothers. So, and she can read me in a way that others can't. I can do an interview, and a TV interview or something, and she can watch it, and she will be able to give criticisms on things that she has picked up that no one else picked up. And so she's my best source of constructive feedback, and that's how it ought to be. And because you know each other, you start. And I mentioned now an interview as an example, but it goes with anything. It goes with just ordinary things every day. You should be able to give each other criticisms and learn from that, and try to be a better person, be a better husband or a better wife, so to speak.
Absolutely. Yeah, your wife has to be your most constructive critic. I guess that's the way to do it. Anyway, I think we've basically been going for, well, it's almost 3 minutes away from 6:30. So, is there anything that you want to say in closing, Ernst?
I don't want to repeat what we've said before about, why I think having a big family is important, and I'm grateful to have this discussion because it's just something that I talk about a lot, and it's actually a more personal discussion than anything else. But I do maintain that big families are the cornerstone, or not big families, healthy families are the cornerstone of a healthy society or a healthy community. Some people are just in circumstances where they have it more difficult. I'm in a way very privileged, and I'm using that word deliberately, to have grown up in a healthy family. My mom and dad are still married. They still love each other. In a way, I grew up very sheltered.
That is absolutely your privilege. Like, this is, I know, I'm with that. Like, everyone says to me, yeah, Scott, but you just got white privilege. And I'm like, no, my privilege is my parents are still married and they still love each other.
Family privilege, yeah. We do have privilege. I think, we're so annoyed with the white privilege debate, but we need to, we need to concede that we do have certain privileges. Every person has certain privileges, and some have more than others. And it's your duty, your responsibility, to make sure to raise your children to have those privileges, to have certain privileges, and preferably to have privileges that you didn't have. And I have some friends and colleagues who I really respect, who come from broken families, who doesn't have a relationship with their father, for example, but they have children, they have a healthy family, their kids love them, they love their kids. And it's a privilege to be able to, it's a privilege to see that and to give that to your kids as well. But in a way, I grew up very sheltered. I grew up in a family that loves each other. And I think it's the best thing that you can do. It's the best, most important legacy that you can leave in this life, is to have a family, to have children, and to make sure that you raise them properly, that you set a proper example for them, and to something that they can learn from and that they can build on. I think that's one of the most important things that we should be doing on this earth.
Amen, brother. Absolutely. Anyway, I will let you get back to what they call it, suicide hour kind of vibes. It's going to be chaos now. It's bath time, and get the kids to bed kind of. I know, like, it's bath time now for my daughter now. So, Ernst, I want to say thank you so much for joining, man. This has been an absolutely fantastic chat. Everyone that's listening out there, go and raise good, strong families, and do it to God's will, because He does. He wills it. Anyway, remember, folks, stay reactionary out there, because hey, there's Scott Tange joining on the tail end over there. Great. Thanks. Good to have you, Scott. Thank you very much for joining us, guys. Stay reactionary out there, because God wills it.